No wife, no kids, no life. My brother's family mocked at Christmas as they helped themselves to my savings. Just a waste of space, they all agreed with smug nods. I smiled without a word and quietly left. 3 days later, my voicemail was flooded with their desperate, panicked pleas, but I was done listening. I never imagined I'd be posting this, but after what happened at our family Christmas gathering, I need to get it off my chest. Fair warning, this might be long since I'm still trying to process everything. You know that moment when you step into a room and everyone goes quiet? That's exactly how my Christmas morning began. I arrived at Mom's house right at 10 a.m., just as she had asked, only to find that everyone else had been there for hours. The Christmas tree was surrounded by open presents, breakfast dishes were already being cleared away, and my nephew Christian was busy with his new video games. The first red flag was that they didn't wait for me, despite Mom's clear instructions. This was our first Christmas without Dad, who passed away in October, and everything felt off balance. Mom gave me a tight hug, but there was a hint of strain in her smile. My sister-in-law, Gabriella, barely looked up from her phone and mumbled a half-hearted "Oh, you made it," as if I were an unwelcome guest crashing a private gathering. I set my gifts down by the tree and tried to ignore the awkward atmosphere. Surprisingly, Christian, bless his heart, was thrilled to see me, even jumping up to show off his new gaming setup, which always brightens our family gatherings. Then Andrew cut in, "Don't bother, Uncle Dominic. He probably wouldn't get it anyway, too busy with whatever it is he does." His comment wasn't subtle. I'd worked hard for my remote tech job while traveling, and Dad always supported my unconventional choices, even if they didn't follow the traditional path Andrew took. But since Dad's passing, the digs about my lifestyle have become more frequent and pointed. Lunch was even worse. Mom had prepared Dad's traditional Christmas roast for the first time since he died, and the room was unusually quiet until Gabriella broke the silence with her saccharine tone. "So, Dominic, any special someone in your life yet? At your age, you really should be thinking about settling down. Christian needs cousins his age." Before I could answer, Andrew added, "Oh, he's too busy living that bachelor life, no wife, no kids, no real commitments," laughing, but with a sharp edge. Everyone at the table either nodded or looked away. I'd heard these remarks before, but I stayed calm and focused on my meal. I'm happy with my life, busy with work, traveling from one hotel room to another, it's my choice. Yet Gabriella pressed on, setting her fork down and saying, "That's not living, that's just existing. You're wasting your potential, and Dad would have wanted more." My voice came out sharper than I intended, "Don't tell me what Dad would have wanted." The tension was so thick you could cut it with a knife. Mom tried to steer the conversation to New Year's plans, but Andrew wasn't finished. "No, we need to address this. The will reading is next week, and we need to be realistic," he said, leaning forward like he was dropping some profound wisdom. "You've got all this money saved up, no responsibilities, while we're doing everything we can to give Christian the best life possible. It's just not fair." That's when I noticed Mom's expression shift. She looked guilty, refusing to meet my eyes. "What do you mean by realistic?" I asked, starting to piece things together. Gabriella then chimed in a sugary tone, "We've had extra expenses, Christian's private school, the house renovations Dad promised to help with before he, passed. We had to borrow against what we knew was coming from the will." My stomach dropped. "Borrow?" The silence that followed was deafening. Finally, Mom whispered, "Your portion, honey, we needed it. You have so much saved already, and we have a family to think about." I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. "You took money from my inheritance without asking me?" I demanded. Andrew scoffed, "Borrowed, as if that makes it okay. And honestly, what were you going to do with it anyway? You're just drifting through life while the rest of us handle real responsibilities." Everyone nodded in agreement, even Mom, even though it clearly pained her. The only one who looked truly upset was Christian, who had stopped eating and stared at his plate. I slowly stood up, the chair scraping the floor, and the room went silent again, everyone expecting an explosion. Instead, I smiled and said, "Thanks for lunch, Mom. I need to go." Gabriella started, "Don't be dramatic," but I was already heading for the door. I could hear Andrew muttering about how I always run away from confrontation. I drove home quietly, and by the time I reached my apartment, my phone was lighting up with messages, mostly from Mom insisting we have a family talk, and one from Andrew telling me to man up and face reality. I haven't responded to any of them. Instead, I called Dad's lawyer and left a message, "Tomorrow morning, I'm going to find out exactly what they've done with my inheritance and what they meant by borrowing." The worst part? I keep replaying Dad's last conversation with me. Just a week before he died, he made me promise to take care of the family but also to stand my ground. At the time, I thought he was just rambling from his medication. Now, I wonder if he knew something like this would happen. I'm not sure what I'm going to do next, but I can't let this slide, not just for the money, but for everything it represents. They want to talk about real responsibilities? Fine, let's talk. My phone is still buzzing, but I think I'll let it ring a while longer. Also, thanks to everyone who left such supportive comments on my last post. I wasn't expecting so much support. A lot has happened in the past 48 hours, and I'm still trying to wrap my head around it all. What I discovered goes much deeper than I initially thought. Yesterday morning, I met with Dad's lawyer, Mr. Wilson. He wasn't surprised to see me, which was my first sign something was off. "I've been expecting your call," he said, pulling out a thick folder. Inside were specific instructions from Dad about this situation. Turns out, Dad knew exactly what was coming. Mr. Wilson then showed me a series of loan documents, all in my name. My signature had been forged on at least 6 different papers over the past year, each one drawing money from my portion of Dad's trust. The total came to just over $285,000. I felt sick looking at those forged signatures. They were almost laughably bad. But here's where it gets even more interesting. Mr. Wilson pulled out another document, Dad's actual will, dated just 2 weeks before he died. "Your father had changed it after a serious talk with your brother." He explained things, then showed me the bank statements. Andrew and Gabriella aren't just struggling, they're drowning in debt. The private school they brag about hasn't been paid for months, and their home renovation is mostly on credit cards. They've been living way beyond their means for years, using Dad's failing health as a bargaining chip for loans. While Mr. Wilson was talking, my phone kept buzzing. I checked it during a break, 27 missed calls, 15 voicemails, and dozens of texts with pointed messages like, "Andrew, you're being selfish. Christian's future is at stake, and Gabriella, your father would be ashamed of your actions, along with Mom, we need to talk." Yes, mistakes were made, but we're family. The most surprising was from Uncle Dom, "I'm sorry about Christmas. Dad and Mom were wrong to say those things." It hit hard. Even kids at 12 understand more than their parents sometimes. Then Mr. Wilson revealed Dad's masterstroke. The amended will has strict conditions. Any money taken via unauthorized loans must be repaid before anyone gets the full inheritance. And here's the twist, Dad put me in charge of managing the repayment plan. "Your father was very clear on this," Mr. Wilson said, showing me Dad's handwritten letter. "I wrote that Dominic understands money and responsibility better than anyone. I trust him to make the right decisions." Just as we were wrapping up, Mr. Wilson dropped another bombshell. "There's something else you should know," he said, pulling out one last document. "Your brother came to me last month, trying to have you declared financially irresponsible. He wanted control over your entire share of the inheritance." That explained the recent jabs about my lifestyle and travels. They weren't just criticisms, they were part of a case against me. Leaving the office, another voicemail came through, this time from Gabriella, her voice trembling. "We need to talk. There are things you don't understand. The school is threatening to remove Christian if we don't pay by next week. Please, we can work something out." I sat in my car for a long while, rereading Dad's letter. Near the end, he'd written, "Son, they'll try to guilt you, they'll call you selfish. Remember, true responsibility isn't about giving in, it's about making the hard choices for the right reasons." Then I hit a line that took me by surprise. "Check the garage at the old house, bottom shelf behind the paint cans. I left something there, you'll need it." I drove to what used to be Dad's house, now Mom's. It was empty, which was a relief. The garage was exactly as Dad left it, tools arranged with military precision. Behind the paint cans, I found a small fireproof safe. The combination was my birthday. Inside were another letter, several USB drives, and a detailed ledger of every loan Andrew had taken over the years, not just against my share, but against Dad's too. The amounts were staggering. The letter began, "If you're reading this, they've finally gone too far. Here's everything you need to protect yourself and teach them a lesson." Then my phone buzzed, a text from Mom, "They're coming over tomorrow morning. Please come, we need to settle this as a family." I spread out the safe's contents on my desk and reread Dad's letter. The final line read, "Sometimes love means standing your ground. You're stronger than they think. Tomorrow's meeting should be interesting." I made copies of everything and sent them to Mr. Wilson for safekeeping. I'm done being the family pushover, but I'm not out for revenge. Dad trusted me to handle this right, and that's what I plan to do. The most recent text came from Christian. "Are you coming tomorrow? I hope you do." I knew someone had to tell the truth, and that's where I'm focusing now. I'll update after tomorrow's meeting. Something tells me it's going to be a turning point for everyone. Update 2. I should have known something was off when I pulled up to Mom's house this morning and saw 3 extra cars in the driveway. Andrew hadn't just brought Gabriella, he'd brought reinforcements, Aunt Linda, Uncle Pete, and our family friend, a financial advisor. They were all in the living room like an intervention panel. Andrew's first words set the tone. "Good, you're here. Now we can discuss how to fix the mess you're making of this family." I almost laughed, this was their game. Mom hovered nervously in the kitchen doorway, clutching a tissue, while Gabriella sat perfectly primed on the couch, makeup done, as if heading into a business meeting rather than a family showdown. Christian was nowhere to be seen, probably at a friend's house, dodging the drama. I took Dad's old armchair, the one by the window. Sitting there felt empowering. I stayed silent and waited. Andrew hated silence, it made him nervous. Sure enough, he started filling the gap. "We've been discussing this," he said, gesturing around the room, "and we think you're missing the big picture. Dad's will is creating unnecessary strain. We have a proposal." Their financial advisor pulled out some papers, and that's when I noticed the logo. It belonged to the same firm managing Mom's mortgage. Interesting. The proposal was typical: immediate access to their full share plus temporary control of my portion to manage family assets more efficiently. In return, they'd set up a repayment plan for the loan starting in 5 years. I let them finish, then pulled out Dad's ledger. Before we go any further, let's talk about the Mountain View property. The room fell silent. Aunt Linda suddenly took a deliberate sip of her coffee. For context, Mountain View was Dad's rental property, 3 fully paid-off units generating steady income. Everyone assumed he left it to Mom in the will. But apparently, Mountain View isn't irrelevant. Here, Andrew said quickly, too quickly, I thought, as I opened the ledger to a marked page. According to this, you took out a second mortgage on it 8 months ago, using Mom's power of attorney while Dad was in the hospital. Did you tell her about that, Andrew? Mom's tissue slipped from her hand. What is he talking about? She asked. It was temporary, Andrew insisted. Gabriella jumped in. We needed capital for an investment opportunity. Everything was under control. I turned to the financial advisor. Is that why the property is now in pre-foreclosure? That's when Mom began crying, deep, harsh sobs that made everyone wince. We bought those units when we first got married. They were our retirement plan. Andrew glared at me with pure hatred. You had no right to dig into private family matters. Private matters like forging my signature on loans or opening 3 credit cards in Mom's name. Silence fell again as the financial advisor began gathering his papers. That's different, Andrew's voice edged with desperation. We're protecting the family's interests. You've never understood what that means. You just travel around with no responsibilities, while we lost $500,000 in online trading. I cut back on every asset you had, and maxed out Christian's college fund. Suddenly, Gabriella stood up. You sanctimonious little, you think you're so perfect, she continued. At least we're trying to build something. What do you have? Empty apartments in different cities, photos of places nobody cares about? I replied quietly, I have no debt, and I have Dad's trust. Then a small voice came from the stairs. Is it true about my college fund? Everyone turned. Christian sat on the middle step, clutching his phone. He'd been listening the whole time. Honey, go to your room, Gabriella began, but Christian interrupted. I recorded everything. His voice trembled. Uncle Dom wasn't lying about them stealing. Was he? The next few minutes descended into chaos, Gabriella crying, Andrew yelling, and Mom sobbing over Mountain View. During the confusion, Aunt Linda and Uncle Pete slipped out. The financial advisor handed me his card before leaving. Apparently, he'd been trying to warn the family about Andrew's schemes for months. In the midst of it all, Christian came and quietly sat beside me in Dad's chair, a small gesture that felt monumental. Finally, after everyone had shouted themselves hoarse, it was clear, things were about to change. I pulled out the final document, Dad's updated will with the repayment terms, and announced, here's what's going to happen. Mountain View will immediately go into trust management to stop the foreclosure. All credit cards in Mom's name are canceled. Christian's remaining college fund is locked in a new account that he can only access at 18, and you two will begin mandatory financial counseling next week. Andrew snapped, or what? You gonna take these forged documents to the police? Silence followed until Mom, her voice raw from crying, asked, can the units be saved? Yes, I reassured her. Dad left enough in the estate to cover it, but Andrew and Gabriella must agree to these terms. I handed out copies of the repayment plan as they read. Then my phone buzzed with a text from Mr. Wilson. Your father would be proud. We meet tomorrow to finalize everything. Before anyone could object further, Christian spoke up. Dad, just sign it, please. I don't want everyone at school to know what you really did. Andrew's face drained of color as he recorded his own son's words, his hand trembling with a mix of anger and shame. On the drive home, messages flooded in, threats from Andrew, tearful apologies from Mom, and a long text from Christian asking if he could stay with me a few days until things calmed. We're meeting Mr. Wilson tomorrow to make it all official, but I have a feeling this isn't over. Andrew's too stubborn. Gabriella too desperate, and there are 2 decades of family history to unravel. At least now, the truth is out, even if no one wanted to hear it. 2 weeks later, I waited until everything was settled before posting this final update. What unfolded wasn't merely a resolution, it completely shattered my brother's well-crafted facade. Some may call it karma, I call it justice. The morning after our family meeting, Andrew made a grave mistake. He tried to drain every one of Mom's accounts. What he didn't realize was that I had already frozen them. His attempted theft the night before triggered exactly what I had hoped, a fraud alert that led to an immediate investigation. Dad's foresight truly paid off. Those USB drives he stashed in the garage safe held years of recorded conversations. He documented every loan request, every lie, every bit of manipulation. The final recording came from his hospital bed, with Andrew desperately pleading for him to sign over power of attorney while heavily medicated. Mr. Wilson helped me execute the plan flawlessly. First, we submitted all the evidence of the forged signatures to the authorities, then we exposed the credit card fraud. The look on Andrew's face when investigators arrived at his office was priceless. One of his colleagues even emailed me the security footage. Gabriella scrambled to control the damage, calling everyone in our social circle to claim I was tearing the family apart. But remember that financial advisor from our last meeting? he had kept his own records of their schemes. When he revealed evidence of their small-scale investment scam, their friends turned on them as quickly as sharks detect blood. The situation at school took an ironic twist. Christian, my brave nephew, forwarded all his recordings to the school board. Not only did they grant him emergency financial aid, but they also launched an investigation into the donations Andrew and Gabriella had been claiming on their taxes. Spoiler alert, those donations never existed. Mom finally saw their true colors when Andrew, in desperation, tried to pin everything on her, claiming she had approved all the loans and credit cards. That's when I played my trump card, Dad's final video message, recorded a week before he passed, which detailed exactly how Andrew had manipulated and stolen from both our parents for years. The Mountain View property was saved and restructured, Mom's retirement secured, and Christian's college fund not only recovered but tripled thanks to Dad's secret investment account, a fact Andrew never knew. Best of all, that account had been set up just for Christian from the day he was born. The real satisfaction, however, came from an unexpected source. Aunt Linda, who had sat silently during our family meeting, finally admitted why she protected Andrew for so long. He'd been blackmailing her with fake evidence of tax fraud. Once we exposed his lie, she handed over years of emails showing how Andrew had systematically exploited every family member. The dominoes fell perfectly. Andrew's firm suspended him pending an investigation, their country club membership was revoked, apparently they'd been overcharging thousands to other members' accounts, their dream home went into foreclosure, their social circle completely cut them off, and 3 friends even filed lawsuits over the investment scam. Gabriella's last-ditch attempt at redemption, holding a press conference to paint herself as a victim, backfired when Christian released group chat screenshots revealing her plan to exploit even more family members. They're moving out next week, downsizing to a small apartment across town. Christian has chosen to stay with me temporarily, fully supported by Mr. Wilson's connections. The court is particularly interested in the recording of Andrew threatening to make Christian pay for exposing their schemes. Mom is doing better now. Yesterday, while going through Dad's old office, she found a letter he wrote to me years ago. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do for someone is to let them face the consequences of their actions. Rock bottom can build a foundation for something better. Family dynamics have shifted permanently. Most relatives have cut ties with Andrew and Gabriella, and those who haven't are keeping their distance. Mom now hosts smaller, quieter Sunday dinners, free from the constant cloud of manipulation. The true victory is Christian's transformation. Free from his parents' influence, he's thriving, his grades are up, he's making real friends, and he told me last night he wants to study finance to help people rather than hurt them. As for me, I purchased the Mountain View property from Mom at full market value, with all the paperwork in order, and I'm converting it into affordable housing with a strict rule that Andrew or Gabriella can never rent there. Petty? Maybe. But it feels incredibly satisfying. I can still hear Dad's final message in my mind. Sometimes love means watching someone lose everything they stole so they can build something real. Andrew and Gabriella now face multiple investigations, civil lawsuits, and total social isolation. Their house of cards didn't just collapse, it burned down, and I documented every moment of its downfall. The family may think this is the end, but they're wrong. I've set up a trust fund for Christian that Andrew and Gabriella can never touch, even after he turns 18. Every stolen penny will be repaid with interest, through wage garnishment if necessary. Their reputation in this town is ruined, not by rumors, but by the undeniable exposure of their own actions. Sometimes the best revenge isn't just seeing someone fall, it's ensuring they can never rebuild their false image again. Christian is staying with me throughout the school year. Last night he asked if we could frame Dad's last letter in his new room to remind him that doing the right thing matters more than just appearing to do so. In the end, Dad's legacy lives on, not through the son he was expected to choose, but through the truth and justice we managed to achieve. In the months that followed, the fallout from that fateful day reshaped our lives in ways we never imagined. The legal investigations wrapped up slowly but surely. Andrew and Gabriella now faced long-term consequences, hefty fines, ongoing court proceedings, and a permanent stain on their reputations. Their assets were seized, and further evidence kept piling up against them. Even their closest friends had turned their backs, leaving them isolated in the ruins of their former lives. Meanwhile, our family began to heal. Mom, once burdened by the weight of constant manipulation, now hosted modest Sunday dinners where laughter replaced tension. The new, smaller gatherings brought together those who truly cared, and over time, her quiet resilience became a beacon for us all. I could see a change in her eyes, a spark of hope and renewal. Christian, free from the shadow of our parents' influence, emerged as the true heir of our father's legacy. With the trust fund securely in place and his future safeguarded, he not only excelled academically but also began mentoring others who'd suffered from similar financial traps. His transformation wasn't just personal, it was a ripple that reached others in our community, inspiring them to seek fairness and justice in their own lives. I, too, found a sense of purpose. After converting the Mountain View property into affordable housing, I watched as families, once struggling, found a fresh start in homes built on the solid foundations of our father's dream. The project became a symbol of hope, proof that even the deepest scars could pave the way for renewal. I made sure that every tenant understood the history of the building, a history of downfall, yes, but also one of rebirth and justice. As autumn settled in, I organized a final family meeting, one last time, not to rehash old grievances, but to celebrate the resilience of truth. The room was filled with familiar faces, each one a testament to the fact that while the past had been marred by betrayal and greed, the future was wide open for forgiveness and growth. Andrew and Gabriella were absent, their departures a quiet, unspoken reminder of the consequences of deception. Instead, our gathering was a mix of those who had chosen to rebuild and those determined to live with integrity. In that room, as we looked back on the long road to justice, I recalled Dad's final words: "Sometimes love means watching someone lose everything they stole, so they can build something real." The resolution wasn't just in the legal victories or the dismantling of a corrupt legacy, it was in the new bonds we forged and the hope we cultivated. In the end, our family learned that true strength comes from facing the harsh truths of our past and choosing to rise above them. Justice had been served, but more importantly, we discovered that healing was possible when we embraced honesty, responsibility, and the chance to start anew. Dad's legacy lived on, not in the form of a chosen heir, but in the unity, resilience, and enduring love that now defined us all.